Welcome to you.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Last week, you briefly mentioned the meaning of the word Ananda, and I didn't catch what you said. And I asked in after Satsang, and nobody actually knew. I know it's always translated as bliss, but I didn't realize it's an A word like ahimsa or ajata. It's not in the affirmative, it's the absence of something. And,
I didn't know that. I don't think I explained it that way.
Oh.
No, I don't think I explained it as a negative, negating word. No.
Right.
Ananda, I don't remember what I said last week either. But Ananda means happiness. Literally means happiness. Now it's often translated as bliss to distinguish it from everyday happiness. But the word Ananda is a very common word in Sanskrit, not just in religious Sanskrit, but in non-religious Sanskrit, to mean happy. So if you were saying, I feel happy, and you were speaking Sanskrit, you might well use the word Ananda. So these words are deliberately used in these texts to be understandable. And in most North Indian languages and some South Indian languages which have adopted some of this, so most North Indian languages are derived from Sanskrit, and most South Indian languages are come from a different language base. They're actually a different type of language. But because they're both in the Indian subcontinent, there's cross. The words transfer between each other. So some Sanskrit words have crept into South Indian languages too. But Ananda, derivatives of this Sanskrit word Ananda, are found across North Indian languages, and it generally means happiness. Now, again, when you see it in a religious context, Sat Chit Ananda is often translated as bliss. But it could just be translated as happiness, in my view. And I may have mentioned this before. Often, you'll see, instead of the word Ananda, another word will be used, Sukham. Sukham is also a very common Indian word, North Indian word. It means happiness. It's another common word for happiness. So it's almost, so sometimes you see Sat Chit Sukham or something like that. Again, it just means happiness. And usually when Sukham is translated, it's translated as happiness. And when Ananda is translated, it's traditionally or typically translated as bliss, because the translators thought surely they couldn't mean just happiness. It's the self, right? It's the self, the absolute. The absolute's devoid of all qualities. And happiness is a quality, right? So they must mean some transcendent happiness. So we're going to translate it as bliss. But the literal meaning, the simple meaning of the word is happiness. So Ananda or Sukha. The opposite of Sukha is Dukkha. And this is another word. Dukkha means pain or hurt. That's the literal meaning in Sanskrit of Dukkha. Dukkha is a word that's used both in Vedic texts and in Buddhism to mean suffering or pain. But again, some people don't like to say it's just pain or suffering. They try and say it means something else, like it means a special type of distress or stress. But the simple translation is pain. So Sukha, Dukkha, happiness and pain, opposites. Very simple words. They weren't, I don't believe that when they were written, they weren't trying to be technical terms. They were just trying to use everyday language. Now, the self, what we truly are, cannot be described using any words. So when we hear happiness, the self can only, the best we can do with words is describe the self in the negative, what it isn't. So happiness really means absence of sorrow. But if we think about what is happiness, happiness actually is the absence of sorrow. The total absence of sorrow is happiness. Some people think happiness is something more than the absence of sorrow, but it isn't. Some people say, well, if you're not feeling sad, that doesn't mean you're feeling happy. Happiness is something more than just not feeling sad. But I guarantee you, if you're not feeling sad, if you say to me, I'm not feeling sad, but I'm not feeling happy, that is actually a form of sadness. There's a subtle pain or sorrow or suffering there, which is why you're not happy. So if you're feeling neutral, if you come to me and say, I'm not feeling sad, I'm feeling neutral, but I'm not happy, I would say, okay, let me challenge you and say that form of neutral feeling is actually a subtle or suppressed form of misery or suffering. And that's why you don't feel happy. So what it points to really is as the Buddha would say, the cessation of suffering, the end of suffering. But a very simple way is to say happiness, bliss, sukha. This is our true nature, happiness. Bhagawan, in his opening paragraph to his essay version of Who Am I, says, your nature is happiness. Everyone wants to be happy without any misery whatsoever, he writes. Your nature is happiness. To unlock the unalloyed happiness, the unbounded happiness, you've got to discover what you are. Everybody experiences happiness when? In deep sleep. So this gives you a clue to what happiness is. It's the happiness, the joy of deep sleep. No misery, no suffering. If you're a pauper or a prince, when you go to sleep, you are the same. The king, the cleaner, the cleaner or the king, the pauper or the prince, whatever these you are, when you go to sleep, it's all the same. No suffering. When the king goes to sleep, when the cleaner goes to sleep, whoever goes to sleep, it's the same. This is like liberation. Some people say, wasn't Ramana highly liberated and somebody else was less liberated? No. If there is true liberation, it's one, it's the same. There's no degrees of liberation. If someone says, my liberation is always evolving, it's always changing, it's always growing. No, that's not liberation. That's Maya. Maya grows and decays and changes and evolves. Liberation, no evolution, no change. It's one. Like deep sleep. Deep sleep is absolute. The bliss is absolute. It's devoid of any suffering whatsoever. It's formless. It's what we are. Bhagavan tells us deep sleep. In Sanskrit, the word for deep sleep, shushupti. Shushupti means sleep. We say deep sleep to differentiate it from dream, shopna. Shopna means dream. I think in Sanskrit it's pronounced swapna or shopna. Shopna, that might be my slight Bengali pronunciation there. I'm not sure. Shopna is dream. Shushupti just means sleep. Literally means sleep. It means deep sleep. Bhagavan says, Shushupti is always here. Always here. Means the peace of what we are. The peace. P-E-A-C-E. Peace of ourself, our own being, is always here. Deep sleep is our true nature. It's ever present. But peace, shanti. Shanti means peace. Shanti is always here. This is why we say Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Means there is peace. Om, what does Om mean? Om means the self. Means Bhagavan. Means the I am. Means the absolute. That's what Om means. Shanti, what does Shanti mean? Means the same. Our true nature. Consciousness, being, bliss, deep sleep. No levels, no evolution, no change, no growth, no decay, no time, no space, no form. To the mind, it's a blank, it's a void. The ego, from the point of view of the waking state, says, oh, that's nothing, that's the void. I don't want that. That's nihilistic. But when it's experienced as it is, in full consciousness, you discover it's full. This fullness is Ananda. It lacks nothing. There's no desire because it is full. Only when you don't feel full does a desire emerge. I'll say that again. Only when you don't feel full does a desire emerge. You want something else to fulfill you. But when you are totally and utterly fulfilled in yourself, this fullness is Ananda. There's no suffering, there's no desire, there's no fear, there's nothing except yourself, fullness. This is symbolized by the image of Sri Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, with his big rotund belly. I haven't got a big belly, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would demonstrate. It could be a bit slimmer, but I'm not at Ganesh proportions yet. And you see Ganesh, he's often holding sweets. He's got 4 arms typically. He's also often holding sweets. In the mythology, he's got a sweet tooth. He likes to eat his sweets. But if we look, that's the exoteric meaning. Exoteric means superficial, outward meaning. If we look at the esoteric meaning means the inward, the deeper meaning. The esoteric meaning of this is that he is full. He is fulfilled. He is satiated. He has no desire for anything else. He is full. He has got the nectar, the sweets of the self, Ananda. These sweets are Ananda. His full belly represents his happiness, his satiety. He's satiated. It means he's full, he's satisfied. So whenever you see Ganesh, if you get a chance, see his belly. A lot of the images, the iconography of Ganesh will have him with a big tummy. Some of them don't. If you see the drawings, they'll often draw it with a big tummy. If you see the statues, then sometimes, because of the way they've had to carve it, he'll be a bit slimmer. But when you see Ganesh and you see his big belly and you see him holding the sweets, this should remind you of the fullness of Ananda. So all these gods and goddesses in the Hindu pantheon, they are symbols of the self. They are symbols of what Sat Chit Ananda is. Sorry, Gordon, did you want to say something?
No, that's great. My mind wants to know, what the Sanskrit words mean, but I know you've told me before that not to get too hung up on the.
Oh, what Sanskrit words? Have I used any, or I don't know?
No, the original question was, what is the meaning of Ananda, the Sanskrit word?
Yeah. So I
meaning
don't. There might be an etymology that I'm not aware of, but all I know. So if you find out, let me know. But all I know is that it means happiness.
I suppose it must be a variation of suffering. Nanda must be
Maybe if that's assuming that the ah in Ananda is a negating prefix, which it may or may not be.
right.
Like there's a word ananta. Anta means the end or the limit. So in Vedanta, the word Vedanta, Veda means the Vedas, and Anta means the end or the limit of the Vedas. So exoterically, that is because the Upanishads were attached onto the end of the Vedas. Esoterically, it's because it's the ultimate knowledge, the supreme wisdom, the ultimate liberating knowledge is Vedanta, end of the Vedas, the final truth of the Vedas. So this word ananta, which means without end. So that's off. The self is sometimes described in some of the Upanishads. For example, Taittiriya Upanishad, the self is described as ananta, which means without end, limitless, without limit, limitless, unending. Is another word for infinite. But I'm not sure if Ananda has the same etymology or not. I don't know. My Sanskrit is not very good, just to make that clear to everybody. My Sanskrit's not very good. My pronunciation's iffy at best, but I know a few words here and there.